Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts, Public and Private Contracting 101. I'm going to bring Joe and William on the stage right now. If you guys just want to mic on, cam on. Great. Welcome, Joe. And actually, there we go. Okay. Well, welcome, guys. I'm going to let you both take about 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, who you are, what you do, and then we'll jump right into questions. Joe, you can start.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Joe Meyer, and I work with the Port of Seattle as an economic developer. It's kind of an odd job, but the best part about it is I get to work to make local economies more inclusive for everyone. And a big part of that is working with entrepreneurs, especially women-owned and minority-owned entrepreneurs, to help get them access to interesting procurement opportunities, especially with the US government and local governments.
So my name is William Poet. I'm here for two real reasons. One, I work for a woman-owned company, and the other is I have 3 daughters. I'm president of 9Q Consulting and Education. We specialize in energetic and emotional intelligence training, along with strategic deployment processing. So really excited to be here with Joe and Blake. And my intention is that everyone here walks away with at least one nugget, one actionable tool on how to grow your business and how to engage in contracting and building and sharing your offers with the world. So really excited and honored to be here.
So the first question is for Joe. Where do I start selling technology service to the government?
So the best, to me, I think because we have people from all over the world, I was looking up some numbers, and I think there's supposed to be almost $200 billion in public procurement of cloud services over the next couple years. So it's a massive selling opportunity. And when you look just within the US or Canadian market, some of the biggest buyers of the service will be the US government and the Canadian government. The best part about this, though, is that both governments have robust resources to help entrepreneurs start working and figuring out where where their products fit within those complex marketplaces, and navigating the sometimes Byzantine process of finding, bidding on, and eventually winning a government contract. And I'll share some resources later in the talk on that.
Great, William, do you have anything to add?
No, it's a great start.
So here's a question from the audience. How do you sell to B2B with contracting agencies on a 1099, not a W-2? So either of you can start. So the question again is how to sell to B2B with contracting agencies on a 1099 or a 1099 to business direct.
Okay. I am going to say get in contact. If you're based in the US, and I'm more just by working with companies in the US, I'm more familiar with the support services. There's a group that I'm going to put in the chat for everyone called the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers of usually whatever state you're in. So if you search Washington PTAC, you get the local one for Washington State, but there should be one in almost every jurisdiction in the US. And if you're in Canada, I found another organization. On these really specific questions, most of these groups will provide classes or even better one-on-one counseling services for free usually, or very low cost, to help you figure out exactly how specific questions, like how a 1099 employee works with the government. I'm guessing if you're a 1099, you might be a little smaller company. And I think there might be a lot of interesting opportunities sometimes at the state or local government where you could work depending on what type of contracts you're interested in, sometimes partnering with the prime, because by partnering with larger organizations, you make them more competitive, or you help them meet goals. For example, Washington State has procurement goals at the state level for IT contracts, where so many will be with small businesses, veteran-owned, women-owned, or minority-owned businesses.
Anything to add there?
No, we do. Our company does a lot of 1099 work, and it tends to be with smaller organizations, and it's a pretty simple process. Once you've negotiated the contract, they will set up you'll just do a 1099 form, and you'll be good to go.
And William, this one's for you. How do you compete with companies like Upwork and Fiverr? How do you compete with that talent pool?
So that's a really great question, and one of the things that there's two things that I would say to any entrepreneur or starting company. Number one, we have 4 C's that we talk about in marketing, and the first is competency. And really make sure, if you're going to compete in the marketplace, that whatever product or service you're bringing is the best. And really make sure that you are continuously investing in yourself. I had a chance to work with the retired president of Hughes Aircraft a few years ago, and when he was running Hughes, they had 75,000 employees, and half of them were engineers. And he said the reason why they were so successful is they were making a massive investment in R&D and product. And what we've discovered, or what we found, is a lot of people focus more on marketing than skill set development. And before you go out into the marketplace, make sure you're the best, make sure you're an expert. And when you get that first client, treat them like gold. And when you do, you're going to find you're going to get more and more work out of there. So, I've done a little bit of research on Upwork and Fiverr, and I tend to hire people that I am referred to. And it's really about those personal relationships. And I want to know that you're the best at what you do. So I really think investing in yourself, continuing to improve your craft, is the best way to do that.
Along that topic, how do you know when you're ready to go to market and start competing with these companies? When your product and service is ready?
That's a great question, and we all we always beta test, and there's a lot of conversation and dialogue around the minimal viable product, right? That MVP, and it's a balance. And what we do is, when we beta test a product, we have kind of our inner circle, and we'll release it with them. We'll take the MVP to them, and we'll spend about 3 to 6 months working with a group. So we're not, in a fish tank, but once we've cleaned out 80% of those bugs, we'll move it out into the marketplace. But I will never take a product or service out that we haven't tested, proven, and quantified. So in terms of time frame on that, 3 months, 6 months.
Great. And Joe, jumping back over to you, when you're working with the government, how do you certify your company as a woman-owned business? That's a big question that a lot of these female entrepreneurs are asking.
Find your local organization, or state, provincial. There's programs that are around certification of women-owned firms and the process for what constitutes a woman-owned firm, but then also what certification processes can vary from one government to the next. For example, in Washington State, there's a state process. Several local jurisdictions have different ones, and then the federal government has a different one. And it's why I really emphasize there's a lot of different governments that might be buying your service. Federal government, different agencies there, and different ways they procure these services. Find the local expert that can help you unpack and understand who's buying your service, and if it's even a good business opportunity. I was talking with some really interesting companies here, and that have truly cutting edge technology, and outside of U.S. Defense or DARPA, I'm not aware of any state or local governments doing stuff at that level yet. Hopefully one day, but sometimes the technology just hasn't caught up at the state or local level for these truly cutting edge products.
Great.
I would just add to that, every agency and organization has a different procurement policy. So once you start engaging with that person that's interested in your product or service, they're gonna hold your hand. And as Joe said, find that expert. But we've worked with the DoD and the TSA, and it's different. It's different everywhere. And what's happened is the interested party has reached out to us for our products and services. And once we started negotiating the contract, they really walked us through the process.
Mm-hmm. And so here's a two-pronged question. So for you, Joe, what do you look for when you're looking at vendors going into as a government employee, like what kind of vendors are you looking for and what do you look for? And then William, to add on top of that, how do you make sure you're hitting those, those objectives and like what Joe as a government organization would be looking for? So Joe, we'll start with you on like what you're looking for, and then William, we'll talk about how do you achieve that?
Yeah. Well, so I've been on tech, I think it totally depends. And the government, local, state, and federal are massive buyers that buy all types of services. A lot of times, I've noticed someone mentioned Upwork and Fiverr. Because we have such specific procurement processes that meet all the different rules and regulations, typically we're searching within our own databases for these. So for that initial marketing, once you kind of figure out different governments you're interested in, make sure you're in the right databases that they're looking for, and you've worked with someone that can help you understand how government procurement experts search for that. For example, we use a kind of odd way of searching where technology is hyper-specific, but we actually will usually start with a NAICS code because so much of our procurement process is driven around that. But again, those technical assistance people, and at least in government, they understand it's a complex process. They can help you understand how to get in those marketplaces and make sure you have the right information so procurement experts can find you.
So William, over to you. When you're selling into companies or governments, like what do you do to stand out? And how can you really, put your company at the forefront of that process?
That's a great question. And really being clear about what your product, what solution you provide. And not only being clear about the solution that you provide in terms of a product or service, but being clear about who your target market is. One of the biggest challenges that young companies have is they want to be everything to everyone. And when that happens, you get lost in kind of the white noise of the marketplace. So as you become more laser specific about what you are an expert at, what you're best at, it's much easier to create your marketing materials. It's much easier to identify who those people are that have those specific needs. So we're really about coaching in terms of clarity. What is the specific need the agency or organization has, and how can you beat and exceed their expectations? So that's that having clarity of service, clarity of offer, and clarity of fit is really, really critical. And it saves a ton of time.
When you're looking at these companies, do you take into account like culture fit and the leadership of the company? And if you do, how do you wrap your head around, okay, we want this company now, do we look deeper into the company? I'm not sure if that's a real thing, but
it is. And this is where I would almost say, as you're getting started with government contracting, working to identify where you think your best market opportunity is. If you have something that you think has defense applications, you'll get to know the DoD. A local government buys services in a completely different way, will have different buyer concerns. But I also do think once you get into some of these and you've had successes, I've worked with non-technical companies that an executive in one part of my organization saw they did really good work and they got more opportunities out of that. So.
And William, over to you. How do you train your culture to really reflect the almost the EQ that government contracts might want in working with the company? Like how do you connect with those people?
Well, I love that question. And we, and the question was, do you really look at the leadership? Do you look at the culture before you say yes to engaging with them? And with our company, 100%. If it's not an energetic fit, then all you're going to do is you're going to create problems for yourself and the organization. So taking time, our company values are love, integrity, service, and play. So that's 9Q. And so when we look to engage with an organization, we're going to make sure that A, we can meet and exceed their expectations. B, we have a real connection with the leadership, and the leadership wants change. There are a lot of organizations out there that give lip service to being purpose-driven. They give lip service to wanting to change the culture or change a leadership dynamic, but they're not willing to really invest and engage. And so the other thing we mandate is from the C-suite down. We need full access and engagement from everyone on the team, or we're not going to take the job, because too often it's either locked in middle management or I never get, it gets to the top. And this is really unfortunate in culture and transformation programs. C-suite level executives are not professional educators. So a lot of times they'll go through a training program, they'll get access to information, and then they're expected to deliver it down line. And that isn't their expertise, and it isn't what they're paid for. So one of the things that we do in our company is we have a scalable process where through one-on-one virtual and online training, we can hit the entire team. And that way you can change a culture. But that really important question.
Yeah, and so let's move on to the topic of rejection. So most of my life I've been a contractor, so I totally get, filling out the RFP, taking all that time, and then nothing. Like, you either A, don't hear back from them, or B, you get just a standardized rejection letter without any kind of advice on like how to move forward. We'll start with you, William. How do you deal with rejection in that sense? And then Joe, if I don't know if you've had experience in rejecting different RFPs or people coming into the government, but what's your advice to them, and how do they like keep going and like keep putting their best foot forward in terms of getting to where they want to be in terms of working with the government?
So rejection, no one loves it. And yet it is 100%. If we're going to talk about contracting, it's a major part of the game. First thing is, you are never rejected. Your offer is rejected, your proposal is rejected. And so you have to learn how to sort of insulate yourself a little bit. And the other thing that happens is people are afraid, once they get that rejection, to continue the contact. And get on the phone and knock on the doors and find out, what was it about my proposal that wasn't a fit? And moving forward, how can I do better? And so one of the things that I'd love you guys to sort of to take in is, if you're going to grow your company and if you're going to grow your skill sets, the real gifts lie in what you are not currently great at. And the only way you can access those is you got to put yourself out. And then the key is you got to get the data. If you put out 100 proposals and you get 100 rejections, you haven't learned anything. You put out a proposal, you get rejected, and you dig and you talk and you knock on doors and get that feedback and take the feedback, and then upgrade your next proposal, upgrade the way you do that next presentation. And so it's a learning curve and it's a progression. So those would be my 2 tips. Take the data, you're not being rejected, and make sure every proposal you send out is better than the last one.
So Joe, to you, what's the best way to get this data from rejection, and how should people go about that?
So in government, it's a regulated process, like everything. But I do think first you'll find groups at a lot of large state and federal government. You'll find groups that specialize in women-owned contracting. Talk with them, and sometimes, but not necessarily the local technical assistance groups. It'll be the ones that might have be in charge of the certification process, because oftentimes there's whole programs set up to help give more access. And those folks can sometimes have contacts within the different organizations that, when they're not in a procurement phase, that is kind of important. Once the RFP has been dropped and advertised, to the point when the selection is finalized, it gets into a really rigid process, because there has to be fairness. You can't be communicating with one applicant but not the other. But I think after that, ask them, is there any way I can get feedback? They may say no. You may also have opportunities where you can talk to procurement specialists at that thing. Do you buy what I sell very often? They may say no, and we're probably not the best customer for you based on A, B, and C. So I think those are important conversations, but definitely have those either before anything's been advertised or after the whole procurement's been closed.
Blake, let me toss out one more tip in this area. You would be amazed. There are experts, or there are other companies in your niche that are crushing it. And you would be amazed at how many of these people, if you call them up and say, I'd love to have a coffee chat with you, I've got some questions, and the willingness of people that are experts in their field to share their information. I've been blown away. I've called up billionaires and said, look, I just have one question about this one thing you did. And one of my favorite responses I got, I said, everyone's always asking me for money and no one's ever asking me for insights. So don't be afraid to reach out to other people in the industry that are farther ahead of you. And that's how we pay it forward. Or if you're forward, that's kind of how we pay it back.
That is such good advice. And I have even found some companies here at Women in Cloud that someone had specialized permitting software that they even informed me. Port of Seattle owns it. So look for other companies that aren't competitors too in this at Women in Cloud that sell a lot of products to the government. They might have interesting insights in selling to cities or someone that already has executed a contract with the federal government.
And William, this question might be more for you. How do you talk an agency into hiring you as a 1099 versus a W-2 employee?
So if you're doing consulting, you're not going to be a W-2 employee. And again, you really have to be clear. And as Joe pointed out, it's different in every state, what the requirements are for 1099s and what the requirements are for W-2s. And honestly, I don't know where you're located, but do some online research. You might need to speak to an attorney that specializes in it, because it literally in our 50 states, it's different in every one. But we've never had a problem once we've had the deal figuring out how to get paid.
Yeah, and this question was from Donica. And Donica, if actually you can talk to this a little bit, if you're being recruited from a recruiting agency, they will always hire you as a W-2. There's no really legal wiggle room for them hiring as a 1099 because they have a specified amount of dollars they can spend on you, and that's already procured through the company they're hiring you for. So for example, if you're getting a job at Google through an agency, that agency has $50,000 for you as an employee, and the way they keep that on track with Google and through their process is through a W-2. So you're going to be W-2 through the recruiting agency, but contracted through that bigger company. So it's rough, and I don't really know if there's a way around that, but hope that helps.
I think we'll be around in the room a little bit afterwards, and I'd be happy to chat with you about some people that might help you get the business license going so you can have that consult. Again, you can still take 1099 opportunities, and if the organization requires it, you'll have all the paperwork in place to also go after the W-2 consulting rounds.
Great, and we're going to switch gears completely. And Joe, this one's for you. What kind of cybersecurity considerations does the federal government look for in vendors?
Ooh, I'm glad you asked. So I just put a bunch of stuff in the, clearly, if you've watched the news recently with the Russian hacks, the US government, and I think it's going to trickle just to anyone that operates any type of government network, cybersecurity will be really important. And I'll put one more thing in the chat where I saw, especially starting kind of with the DoD from this one webinar I saw from our local PTAC, but there are processes, and to even be able to probably bid and not get thrown out on the first round. Cybersecurity and de-risking other concerns of government will be a big part of understanding if your product and services are a good way to go. And if I could add just one tiny little bit to that, I was poking around, and it looks like the General Services Administration, which kind of acts as one of the big buyers for the US government, is just beginning a kickoff for a major procurement for cloud services. And I put all the info I could find on it in the chat. But if you do cloud services, now might be a good time to look at some of the stuff the federal US government's buying.
William, I don't know if you have anything to add, but if you do, here's your chance.
Not on that topic. Joe nailed it.
Okay, so that was all of our questions for today. Let's go into final thoughts. Like Joe, obviously you work in the government, and William, you're more so a private contractor. Like, what's your advice for anyone wanting to get into either of those industries? Like, what's the number one thing they have to do, and what's maybe one bullet that they can take? What one action can they take today to get started? And Joe, we can start with you.
Sure. I just say build your business team, and the public sector has free resources that can help you in most countries. You'll have to kind of figure them out. But I'd start with your number one, find your local procurement technical assistance. Number two, look at local economic development organizations at the state and city and local level. They may have interesting contacts and services or accelerators that they run that you've never heard about. And I think last, just really look at the local tech ecosystem. Women in Cloud is an amazing virtual one that we can access from all over the world now. But find other companies that can help mentor you, that have been there, that have done that, and really just build your business team.
Yeah, final thought would be, when you look at your company, when you look at your offering, love it with all your heart. Because if you love what you do, and if you love the people you serve, you're going to figure it out. You'll find a way. And life is too short to spend it doing something you aren't passionate about, you aren't really turned on by. So if you are in love with what you do, you're going to find a way to be successful. And use Google. It's never been easier to access data and information. When you have clarity about what you need, and that's key, get the clarity, it's really easy to find it. And I just want to thank Blake and Joe and Chaitra and Women in Cloud for giving us an opportunity to serve. It's really an honor to be here. And I think, Joe and I are going to hang around for a little bit if anybody wants to do a little one-on-one questions.
Great. Well, guys, before we go, I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to take a picture. So smile on 3. We have to get that Women in Cloud logo in there. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, smile. Guys, thank you so much for coming, and they'll be in the lobby if you guys have any additional questions, and we're out.
All right. Thanks, Blake. Thanks, Joe.